Why do so many funny people end up so broken? It's the dark question at the heart of comedy. They give us everything on stage, but the bottle takes everything from them in private. We'll reveal the 20 most shocking stories, including a TV star who lost a $100 million job because she couldn't escape the cycle. 1. Robin Williams. Robin Williams was more than a comedian. He was a force of nature. His mind moved at lightning speed, creating characters and jokes faster than anyone could keep up. From Mork and Mindy to Mrs. Doubtfire, he was a genius, beloved by millions. But here's the kicker. Behind that manic energy was a man in deep, recurring pain. In the 1970s and 80s, his life was famously wild. He had a serious problem with the bottle and other illicit powders. He got clean for his family, for his friend John Belushi, who met a tragic end. And for 20 long years, he was sober. But you see, the pressure never really leaves. While filming a movie in Alaska, a place that was remote and lonely, he started to feel the pull. He started drinking again. He later said it was just a tiny thread, but it quickly became a cable. This relapse, combined with other serious health problems that were attacking his brain, created a terrible spiral. To put it mildly, he was in a fight for his life. The man who made everyone else happy was in a place of profound sadness, a place the bottle had helped to reopen. His final days were a tragedy, a genius mind lost to a shadow that had chased him for decades. Robin's story is heartbreaking, a true legend lost. But what about a comedian whose entire act was about high-energy physical chaos? For our next star, that chaos wasn't an act, it was a terrifying reality. 2. Chris Farley. Chris Farley was a human hurricane. When he played Matt Foley, the motivational speaker who lived in a van down by the river, he was a ball of pure physical comedy. He fell through tables, he screamed, he sweated, and America fell in love with him. But many people are crazy about that kind of energy, not realizing what fuels it. Behind the scenes, Chris was in a desperate fight. His hero was John Belushi, and he seemed determined to follow in his footsteps, in all the worst ways. He was in and out of recovery centers, reportedly 17 different times. But nothing stuck. The bottle was his constant companion. It fed his isolation. The thing nobody tells you is how hard his friends fought for him. His Saturday Night Live castmates, like Adam Sandler, would beg him to get clean. His friend and manager tried to lock him in his own house to keep him safe. But the habit was too strong. His body, which he used like a battering ram for comedy, just couldn't take the punishment. He was found in his Chicago apartment, having taken a fatal amount of substances. He was only 33 years old, the exact same age as his hero, John Belushi, who met a similar end. Farley's end at 33 is a dark echo of another SNL star. But our next comedian was a trailblazer. Tay, man who changed stand-up forever, only to have his life almost burned away by his habits. 3. Richard Pryor. Before Richard Pryor, comedy was polite. It was guys in suits telling jokes. Pryor tore all that down. He got on stage and talked about his life, his pain, and the world he saw in a way no one had ever dared. He was a raw nerve, a true genius. But you see, he was also a man in deep, deep pain. His childhood was filled with dark and traumatic moments, and he used spirits and other materials to cope. His life was one of constant chaos. He was known for his wild parties and unpredictable behavior. He was in and out of recovery centers, but the habit always called him back. His habit led to one of the most shocking and bizarre incidents in Hollywood history. In 1980, he was freezing a large amount of illicit powder, a dangerous process. Something went horribly wrong, and the materials exploded. He was set on fire. In a panic, he ran down the street, ablaze, for more than a mile. He somehow survived. This fiery incident became a national story, and even a part of his comedy act. but it was a terrifying sign of how out of control his life had become. His health was never the same after that, and his body was left in a fragile state. Pryor's fiery incident is legendary, a true rock-bottom moment. But he wasn't the only early SNL legend to have a fatal battle with his habits. His partner in comedy was just as wild and met an even quicker end. 4. John Belushi. John Belushi was a rocket. He was the original bad boy of Saturday Night Live. He was the star of Animal House. He was a blues brother. In 1978, he was, without a doubt, the king of the world. Here's a wow factor for you. In a single year, Belushi had the #1 movie in America, Animal House, the #1 album, The Blues Brothers, and the #1 rated late-night show, SNL. To put it mildly, he was a superstar. But he had a dark side. He lived by the code of too much is not enough. He partied hard. For him, the bottle was just the beginning. It was a gateway to other harder materials. His friends, like Dan Aykroyd, tried to control him. They tried to keep him safe. But John was a whirlwind. He didn't know how to say no. In 1982, he was staying at a famous hotel in Hollywood. After a long bender, his partying went too far. He was found lifeless, having taken a fatal mix. He was only 33 years old. His end was a warning to all of Hollywood, a sign that the party had gone too far. Belushi's end at 33 stunned Hollywood. But across the ocean, a new generation of comedians were facing the exact same problems, including one Scottish comedian who had to quit or face a terrifying end. 5. Frankie Boyle. Many people are crazy about Frankie Boyle's comedy. It's dark, sharp, and to put it mildly, not for everyone. He's one of the UK's most famous and feared comics, saying things no one else would dare. What many overlook is that this dark humor was born from a dark place. He started hitting the bottle hard in his early years. He admits it was a way to numb himself from his own past and the world around him. He was on a bad path, and he knew it. But here's the kicker. Unlike many on this list, Frankie had a moment of clarity. At just 26 years old, he looked at his life. He saw the path he was on. He realized if he didn't stop, he would end up gone. He wasn't at a rock bottom. He hadn't lost everything. He just used his sharp brain to see the future, and he didn't like what he saw. So he just quit. Cold. He's been sober ever since, channeling all that dark energy into his comedy instead of his personal life. Frankie Boyle stopped himself before the fall. Our next comic wasn't so lucky. He had to hit rock bottom, ending up in court and a hospital before he saw the light. 6. Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith is a beloved voice in British comedy. You might know him as the grumpy old man from TV, a poet and a radio host. For years, his act and his life were soaked in spirits. He was what you'd call a high-functioning dependent. He had daily benders, but he'd still get up and go to work. He'd perform, he'd write. But you see, you can only function for so long. The habit eventually caught up with him. His health began to fail. His habit eventually led him to court. It led him to the hospital. He was in a very bad way. His rock bottom came in 2002. He realized he was at a crossroads. He could keep drinking and lose his life, or he could stop and save it. He chose to stop. And he did it in the most public way possible. He wrote a comedy show all about his battle with the bottle. He turned his lowest point into art, and he's been sober ever since, a true story of pulling back from the edge. Arthur Smith turned his pain into a play. But our next comedian's story has no happy ending. He was a performer who lived and, tragically, finished his life on stage, all while under the influence. 7. Ian Cognito. Ian Cognito was a legend on the UK comedy circuit. He wasn't famous like the guys on TV, but to other comedians, he was a king. He was a comedian's comedian, known for his wild, chaotic, and unpredictable performances. He also lived hard. His life was a mess of bar tabs and late nights. He would perform every night in a haze, fueled by the bottle. It was part of his act, but it was also his reality. His health was not good. To put it mildly, he was not taking care of himself. In April 2019, he was performing at a small club. He wasn't feeling well. He even made a joke on stage, asking the crowd to imagine if he had a medical event right in front of them. The thing nobody tells you is what happened next. Just minutes later, he sat down on a stool on stage. He went silent. The crowd, they thought it was part of the act. They laughed, but it wasn't an act. He had a major medical emergency and passed away, right there on the stage. The bottle had taken its toll in the most public and tragic way possible. Passing away on stage is a story. That sounds like a dark legend, but our next comedian is a true legend, one who had to fight his habits to save his career, a fight that lasted his entire life. 8. George Carlin. George Carlin was more than a comedian. He was a philosopher. He was the man who changed the way people thought about language, society, and life. His 7 words you can't say on television routine is iconic, a landmark in comedy history. But you see, for all his sharp thinking, he had a lifelong battle with his own body. He was a heavy user of spirits, and he also had a big problem with a pain pill called Vicodin. This combination is, to put it mildly, terrible for your heart. And Carlin had a bad heart. Here's a stunning wow factor. He had his first heart attack at just 38 years old. He would go on to have 2 more major heart attacks, plus multiple procedures to keep him alive. He went to a recovery center. He would get clean, then he would relapse. It was a constant fight, his whole life. His health was a ticking time bomb, one that his habits made tick much, much faster, all while he was writing some of the most brilliant comedy ever heard. Carlin fought his demons his whole life. Our next comedian had a similar fight, but his rock bottom came just as he was about to become one of the biggest stars in late-night television. 9. Craig Ferguson. Many people are crazy about Craig Ferguson. His time on The Late Late Show was smart, silly, and deeply personal. He wasn't like other hosts. He would tear up his script. He would have real conversations. And there's a reason. Craig Ferguson has been to the edge and back. Before he was a star in America, he was a struggling comedian in the UK. He was also in a deep, dark battle with the bottle. He would have blackouts, waking up with no idea what he had done or where he had been. It was terrifying. It got so bad that on Christmas morning 1992, he woke up after a bender and couldn't remember anything. He realized with total cold clarity that he was going to take his own life if he had one more drink. He was at the very bottom. He quit that day and has been sober ever since. He famously gave a speech about it on his show years later, a powerful 14-minute moment of honesty about his recovery that became a viral sensation. Craig Ferguson's story of recovery is inspiring. But our next star's story is a whirlwind of fame, chaos, and a public battle with habits that made him one of the most famous men in the world. 10. Russell Brand. Russell Brand burst onto the scene like a firework. He's loud, he's flashy, and he has a way with words that is, frankly, mesmerizing. He became a huge star in the UK, then in Hollywood, starring in movies like Forgetting Sarah Marshall. But the thing nobody tells you is that his entire career was almost derailed before it began. From a young age, he was battling serious dependencies, not just on the bottle, but on heavy, illicit powders. His behavior was completely out of control. He was let go. From jobs, including a high-profile one at MTV, for his wild conduct. He was in and out of recovery centers more than 12 times. He was a total mess. Finally, his agent sat him down and told him in no uncertain terms that he was going to end up in a hospital, a prison, or worse. Something clicked. He got clean and has been a huge, outspoken voice for recovery and helping others ever since. Russell Brand's recovery is a core part of his public image. Our next comic also found sobriety, but only after a health scare convinced him that his breakfast choice was ending his life. 11. Frank Skinner. To millions in England, Frank Skinner is a national treasure. He's the guy who co-wrote and sang the famous Three Lions soccer anthem, a song that plays every time there's a big tournament. He's a sharp, lovable comic. But what many overlook is that the Frank Skinner they know almost never existed. In his 20s, he was a different person. He was a university lecturer who was deep in the grip of the bottle. His drink of choice? Pernod, a strong, licorice-flavored spirit. And he would drink it for breakfast. He was in a terrible state. In 1986, he got a bad case of the flu. He was so sick he couldn't even keep his drinks down. It was the first time he'd been sober in years, and the moment of clarity terrified him. He was 29 years old and a total wreck. He realized he had a choice, the bottle or a future. He chose a future. He quit drinking and started his comedy career. He knew he'd never be successful if he kept the habit. Frank Skinner chose a new life. Our next comedian, however, has made a different choice. He actively performs while under the influence, making it a dangerous part of his act. 12. Doug Stanhope. Doug Stanhope is not for everyone. His comedy is gritty, honest, and often shocking. He has a fiercely loyal cult following who love that he says what no one else will. And he has a reputation. He often performs on stage with a drink in his hand. He's open about his love for the bottle. But you see, this is not just a stage persona. He admits that he is often genuinely under the influence while on stage. It's a high-wire act. He claims it helps him, loosening him up. But he also admits it's a huge risk. There have been shows, by his own admission, where he's gone too far. He's become tongue-tied, unable to remember his jokes, and the show has fallen apart. It's a chaotic way to live, a gamble every single night to see if the comedian or the bottle will win. Doug Stanhope gambles with his act every night. Our next comic's gamble created a whole persona, a beloved character that was both a genius creation and a cry for help. 13. Johnny Vegas. Johnny Vegas is one of the most unique comics ever to come out of the UK. He'd stumble on stage, slurring his words with a pint of stout in his hand. He'd rant in a high-pitched, emotional voice about pottery and his sad life. It was chaotic, surreal, and, to put it mildly, hilarious. But here's the kicker. It wasn't entirely an act. The man's real name is Michael Pennington, and he's a quiet, shy, artistic person. He was studying ceramics. He was terrified of performing. So he found a solution. He would drink. He would drink a lot. The bottle allowed him to shed his shy personality and become Johnny Vegas, a loud, angry, and very funny drunk. It was a shield. It made him a star, but it also fueled a long period of chaos. He was a Jekyll and Hyde character, and the bottle was the potion that brought the monster out to play. He's since talked about how he had to kill Johnny to save Michael. Johnny Vegas used the bottle to create a character. Our next comedian's character was his dependency, a non-stop, neurotic, black-clad man who was falling apart in public. 14. Richard Lewis. Richard Lewis is the Prince of Pain. That was his title. For decades, his entire act was built on one thing: his pain, his endless therapy, his chaotic, failed relationships. His life, as he told it, was one long, slow-motion disaster. He was the original high-anxiety comedian. He was always dressed in black. He would pace the stage like a caged animal, wringing his hands, looking like he was about to collapse from pure nervous energy. The audience loved it. They thought it was a brilliant character. But here's the dark secret. What many overlooked was that this wasn't just an act. It was real. He was truly, deeply falling apart. For decades, he was in a dark spiral. He was in a deep, desperate battle with the bottle. He was struggling with other substances. He was, in his own words, a total mess. His personal life was in shambles. His professional life was hanging by a thread. His career was suffering, even as he became more famous. The Prince of Pain wasn't just a character he played on stage, it was a cry for help. In the early 1990s, he hit a wall, a hard wall. He looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back. He saw a ghost. He was near the end, the very end. He has said in interviews that he was just a couple of days away from a fatal end. Think about that. 48 hours. That's how close he came to not being here. He finally got help. He went into recovery. He has been sober ever since. He's had a huge career resurgence. You know him as the hilarious, neurotic version of himself on the show Curb Your Enthusiasm. But he's always been honest. He's always been clear. He was just 1 or 2 bad nights away from not having a life at all. Richard Lewis pulled himself back from the brink. Our next comedian's wake-up call was much more public, involving flashing lights, handcuffs, and a court-ordered accessory. 15. Tracy Morgan. Tracy Morgan is a one-of-a-kind performer. There is nobody else like him. His energy is off the charts. His comedy is beautifully bizarre. He's a beloved star. We know him from 30 Rock. We know him from Saturday Night Live. His voice, his style, it's unforgettable. But Tracy has also had a very public and very long battle, a battle with the bottle. His struggles weren't hidden. They weren't kept behind closed doors. They made headlines. His problems led to multiple incidents involving driving under the influence. This wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It got so serious that a judge had to step in. The court system had to intervene. Here's the wow factor. This is where the story gets crazy. He was ordered by a judge to wear a special monitoring bracelet right on his ankle. This device is known as a SCRAM. S-C-R-A-M. What does it do? It's like something from a science fiction movie. It actually sniffs his sweat. Think about that. It samples his perspiration 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Why? To detect if he's had even a single drop of spirits. If it detects anything, even a tiny amount, it sends an alert directly to the police. It was a very public and very high-tech rock bottom. He couldn't hide. He couldn't have a secret drink. He was being monitored by a machine. Thankfully, Tracy's story has a different kind of turning point. A tragic, life-changing accident. A horrifying crash that nearly took his life. After that, he has reevaluated his life. He has reevaluated his health. He has a new perspective on just how precious life is. Tracy Morgan's battle was public and embarrassing. But for our next comedian, her battle wasn't just embarrassing. It cost her one of the biggest TV shows of the 1990s. 16. Brett Butler. In the mid-1990s, Brett Butler was on top of the world. She was touchable. Her show, Grace Under Fire, was a massive hit. We're not talking a minor success. It was a top 10 show, routinely. It was one of the crown jewels of network television. She played a funny, tough single mom, and millions of people loved her. She was relatable. She was sharp. She was a star. She was one of the most successful women on all of television, and she was earning a huge paycheck. Get this, you need to sit down for this number. She was reportedly earning $250,000 per episode. That's $250,000 every single week. But behind the scenes, a different story. Behind the cameras, the show was falling apart. And it was because of one person. It was because of her. Brett was in a deep, dark struggle, a struggle with the bottle, and a powerful dependency on pain pills. This combination was toxic. It changed her. Her behavior became erratic. It became impossible. She would show up hours late to set. Sometimes she wouldn't show up at all. She would yell at cast members. She would scream at the crew. She couldn't remember her lines. The entire production ground to a halt, day after day. The stress on set was unbelievable. It got so bad that the network had to make a choice. A terrible choice. They had to pull the plug. They canceled one of the most popular shows on television. Why? Because the star was, to put it mildly, out of control. She lost it all. The show, the fame, the $250,000 an episode job. Gone. Brett Butler lost a $250,000 an episode job. Our next comedian's battle started much earlier, in college, as a way to hide a dark secret from her past. 17. Harriet Dyer. Harriet Dyer is a rising star in the comedy world. She's an Australian comic who is making a huge name for herself. Her style is open, honest, and very, very funny. She's also part of a new generation of comics, a generation that is brutally open about their personal struggles. It's a key part of her act. She hides nothing. Her battle with the bottle started back in university, back in college. She was drinking heavily. But it was different. She has said that she drank in a way that was different from her friends. For them, it was just for fun. For her, it was something else. It was a need. She wasn't just partying, she was escaping. She was eventually diagnosed as a dependent. But here's the thing nobody tells you. Here's the core of the story. She was using the spirits for a reason, a heavy reason. She was trying to numb the pain from a dark, deep trauma in her past. But that wasn't all. There was another layer. What she didn't know was that she also had an undiagnosed mental health condition, bipolar. This combination is a perfect storm. She was, in effect, trying to self-medicate. She was trying to treat the trauma and the bipolar disorder all by herself. She was trying to quiet her own brain. But the medicine she was using was a poison that was making everything worse. It was amplifying the anxiety. It was deepening the depression. It was a vicious cycle. She's now sober, and she uses her powerful, honest story to help others who are fighting the same battle. She is a voice for recovery. Harriet Dyer's story is one of trauma and recovery. Our next comic also uses her recovery in her act, admitting she was deep in a hole of both spirits and illicit powders. 18. Lulu Popplewell. Does the name Lulu Popplewell ring a bell? Think hard. Think about the holidays. Think about one of the most famous Christmas movies ever made. That's right. Love Actually. She was the little girl who played the lobster in the school play, the one who famously complained that she didn't get a singing part. She was adorable. She was a memorable part of a beloved film, a film seen by tens of millions of people. Well, she grew up, and she became a stand-up comedian. But growing up in the spotlight, even a little bit, can be tough. It puts a pressure on you that most people can't understand. You're the kid from that movie, forever. She found herself in a spiral of dependency. And this wasn't just a small problem. She has been very public, very honest, that she was in a deep hole. A hole that involved not just the bottle, but with heavy powders too. She was, in her own words, a total mess. The cute kid from the Christmas movie was fighting a very adult, very dangerous battle. It's a shocking image. It's a hard reality. She now uses her comedy to talk about it. She talks about her recovery. She stands on stage and turns her darkest moments, her lowest points, into laughter. It's her way of owning her story. It's her way of taking the power back. She demystifies it. And it helps to break the stigma that surrounds dependency. She is showing the world that even the cute kid from a Christmas movie can have a dark, hard battle. Lulu Popplewell found recovery through her comedy. Our next comedian had a very public and very long-running dependency that became a core part of her public identity. 19. Janeane Garofalo. Janeane Garofalo. In the 1990s, she was the queen of cool. She was the voice of a generation. Her smart, cynical, and sarcastic style defined an era. She was the icon of Generation X. She was everywhere. She was in Reality Bites. She was on The Ben Stiller Show. She starred in The Truth About Cats and Dogs. She was on Saturday Night Live. If it was cool and funny in the 90s, she was a part of it. Her look, her attitude, everyone wanted to be her. But you see, she has been very open about a secret. She was not okay. Not even close. During that entire time, she was in a deep, long-running battle. A battle with the bottle. Here's the wow factor. This is the part that will change how you see those movies. She has publicly admitted to being in a haze, or completely under the influence, for most of her biggest, most famous years. That's not an exaggeration. She has said she doesn't even remember shooting some of her most famous work. She was there, but she wasn't present. That cool, detached, cynical person you saw on screen, part of that was her hiding. She has said her dependency was a way of coping with her own crushing anxiety, coping with her deep insecurity. She didn't feel cool. She felt terrified. The spirits were her armor. It wasn't a secret that she partied, but it was a quiet, constant struggle that defined her. It defined her life and her career for decades. She has since talked about her path to sobriety, but it's a stark reminder. A reminder that the person who seems the coolest on the outside is often fighting the hardest battle on the inside. Janeane Garofalo's battle defined her most famous era. Our final comedian's battle with the bottle not only stalled his career, but was a major factor in the end of one of Hollywood's most famous marriages. 20. Tom Arnold. Tom Arnold. He became famous in the 90s for two reasons. First, his own comedy. And second, his high-profile, chaotic marriage to a superstar. That superstar was Roseanne Barr. He was a writer on her massive hit show, Roseanne. And then he became her husband. This wasn't a quiet Hollywood romance. Their relationship was, to put it mildly, a roller coaster. It was a complete circus. It was a non-stop tabloid sensation. You couldn't go to a grocery store without seeing their faces on the cover of a magazine. They were loud. They were wild. They were everywhere. And a huge part of that chaos, a huge part of that drama was the bottle. Both of them had their demons. That's been well documented. But Tom's heavy use was a constant problem. It was the gasoline on an already raging fire. It fueled the fights. It fueled the erratic behavior. It stalled his career. He couldn't get work. Why? It created non-stop drama. It made him unreliable. It was a major, major factor in their very public, very messy divorce. For years, he was known more for his problems than his comedy. He was a punchline. He was Roseanne's ex. He was the guy who spiraled out of control. He eventually got clean. He got sober after hitting a hard, painful rock bottom. He has since rebuilt his life and his career. But his story is a classic Hollywood tale. A tale of too much too soon, and a habit that nearly cost him his career, his marriage, and his life.